Okay, so starting off this list, at the number 10 spot, we have the crayon holder. When Cassidy Goldstein was 11 years old, the crayons that she was using to colour with snapped and broke. Now most of us have experienced this as kids, and usually you have to just kind of throw them away, don't you? Not Cassidy though. She put the crayon pieces into a small plastic tube that was used to keep roses fresh during shipping. She had accidentally invented the crayon holder. In 2002, she filed a patent for it and sold the license, with Cassidy getting 5% of every single sale. In 2006, she was named Inventor of the Year, and the money from that paid for most of her college costs and helped her start her own life in New York.
Okay, so moving into number 9, we have George Neeson, who invented the trampoline at the age of 16 years old. That is incredible.
Crazy.
George used to watch trapeze artists perform their daring stunts at circus. He saw them dismount at the end of their routine, dropping from their swinging bars and onto the safety net down below, and when they would land, they would like bounce a little bit. Well, he thought, well, why stop the routine there? Why can't we get these guys to keep on bouncing, and then they can like create this awesome new routine with like new tricks. So that's when he got to work with this idea in his parents' garage to create what he called a bouncing rig. He strapped a canvas sheet to a rectangular steel frame. Over time, he kept changing the design of the trampoline. 16-year-old George, with his invention, invented a whole new sport, a whole new world. And in 2000, trampolining became an Olympic sport during the Sydney Summer Games.
Alright, moving on now to number 8, we have something that everyone needs when it gets too cold: earmuffs.
What a great invention.
I know, I couldn't live without them, except I never wear them, but I could live without them. I just wear a hat all the time, so don't need them. But have you guys ever used a pair of earmuffs to stop your ears from freezing in the cold weather? Well, you have Chester Greenwood to thank for that. In 1873, when he was 15 years old, Chester needed something to protect his ears when he went ice skating. Now, he was allergic to his wool cap and needed a solution. One day, he was at home when he saw his grandmother on the sewing machine. He asked her if she could sew some beaver fur in circles to a bent piece of wire in the shape of his head. Hey presto, he had himself the first ever pair of earmuffs. By the time he was 25, he already had his own earmuff factory, and his invention has been keeping ears nice and toasty ever since.
Frank Epperson is up next in our list at number 7. Lucky number 7. When Frank was 11 years old, he accidentally invented the popsicle. Back in 1905 in San Francisco, he created this concoction that he left outside in the freezing winter night one night. The concoction he created froze solid. He noticed how cold it was, and that's when he decided to have a little bit of fun by mixing soda water powder and water into a glass, and he just left it outside to freeze. Moments later, Frank created the world's first popsicle. So the product he created was actually named Epsicle, after his last name Epperson. However, later he changed the name of the tree the Popsicle, and not what he came up with originally. In 1925, Frank sold the rights to the Popsicle brand name to a New York company. 3 years later, the Popsicle sales topped $60 million, but with every sale, Frank made royalties on it. So yeah, he made a lot of money from this invention throughout his whole life.
Just from popsicles?
Just from popsicles. Incredible. At number 6, this next invention was a very important one. This invention was made for millions of people who are blind. And of course, I'm talking about Braille. The inventor of Braille was Louis Braille. He was 12 years old when he invented Braille. 12 years old! Louis became blind by accident when he was 3 years old. He wanted a way to be able to read, and when he invented Braille, he was able to read and write. In fact, he started to excel in his education. He received a scholarship. It has now been adapted for use in languages worldwide. Okay, so now we just got finished talking about Braille. Let's see what we got next.
Yeah, okay, moving on now to number 5. We're halfway through, and we have one with a bit of a funny name. It's called the Oinkosaurus app. So these days, a lot of kids in the world use apps, but how many kids have actually made one themselves? When Fabian Fernandez Han was 12 years old, he came up with the concept for a financial app for kids. It helped teach kids about money, how to save it, and how to manage it. Fabian did get some help when it came to actually programming and releasing the app, but the concept, that was all him. He got the idea for Oinkosaurus after watching his dad buying stocks, and he asked if he could do the same, and it turns out he could. Alright, moving on to number 4 now, we have Superman. Okay, so I know this one isn't really like a product, but yeah, Superman is too cool to leave this one out. In 1933, high school student Jerry Siegel wrote a short story about a man who gained psychic powers from an experimental drug called The Reign of the Superman. It was illustrated by his classmate Joe Shuster. Superman was actually not an initial success to begin with, but as the character evolved, it began to draw some attention until on April 18th, 1938, it was first published in Action comics by DC, and the rest is history. So if you guys are currently in high school and you feel a little bit powerless in life, high school students were the ones who created the most powerful superhero of all time. It's kind of cool.
Number 3, we have 12-year-old Peter Chilvers, who invented the first windsurfing board. He invented this back in 1958 when he decided that one day to attach a sail to a surfboard, and the rest is history. Could you guys imagine the first feeling of catching wind and just taking off into the sunset? I've tried windsurfing before. It's hard, but it's so amazing. So crazy when you think about windsurfing. It came from a 12-year-old kid who just decided to do something, out of the ordinary, and he just wanted to create this new thing, and now it's a huge sport that millions of people love doing. This just shows you how remarkable and brilliant the young minds are.
Okay, we've reached number 2 now, and we have the calculator. When do you guys think the calculator was invented? The 1980s, maybe? The 1940s? Sometime in the 1800s? No, it was actually invented in 1642 by a young French guy called Blaise Pascal. He was 18 at the time, so on the border between being a child and an adult, but this is too amazing to not put on the list. He made it for his dad, who was a tax collector. It was made up of a series of complicated gear wheels, and it could add, subtract, multiply, and divide 2 numbers. That's pretty simple by today's standards, but this 18-year-old made this over 370 years ago. He made about 50 of them, but nobody seemed to really care at that time. Well, he's now being mentioned in a top 10 video, which has to mean something, I guess, maybe.
And finally, at number 1 for the top 10 inventions invented by kids, I think this is one of my favorite inventions of all time, and this invention, it absolutely changed the world. Let me know if you guys agree, and of course, I'm talking about the television. Philo Taylor Farnsworth was an American inventor and television pioneer. He made many contributions that were crucial to the early development of the all-electronic television. Philo has over 160 now United States and foreign patents for the television. Also, he holds over 100 more patents for the radio. Philo was 14 years old when he first started to draft his first sketch of the TV. Most would say that this kid was a genius. Without Philo, we would never have Netflix, you can never Netflix and chill, or any of those great TV shows that we all love to watch. So a huge thanks to this guy, for this kid really, who invented this amazing invention.
Alright, as usual, we're starting off at number 10, and we have wristies. Have you guys ever seen these things before? They're wristies, and they were invented by Catherine Gregory in 1994 when she was just 10 years old. Now, she came up with this as a way of keeping her hands and forearms warm and dry during the winter. They're basically kind of like slip-on sleeves that are worn underneath coats and gloves. In 1997, she became the youngest person ever to appear on the QVC shopping network, making $22,000 in sales in just 6 minutes. Now, since 2010, she has been the proud CEO of her own Wristies Company Incorporated.
Next up, number 9, we have Making Bacon Dish. Okay, this one wasn't an invention that changed the world, but it's made a lot of bacon lovers very happy, including myself. The Making Bacon Dish is used to hang up bacon as it cooks so that the fat just drips off, because no one wants to be eating that. It was invented by Abby Fleek when she was just 8 years old. Incredible. She was making bacon with her dad one day and she couldn't find any paper to clean up the fat, and Abby said, hey, why don't we just hang it up? They made the prototype in 1993, and by 2002 their Making Bacon company was earning more than $1 million a year. I'm impressed, but you know what, I'm also hungry for bacon right now. I'm actually craving it. I absolutely love bacon.
Alright guys, we've reached the number 8 spot now, and we have the T-Pack. The T-Pack is a pack to strap onto your thigh to carry your video games around. Genius! It was invented in 1998 by Kelly Reinhardt when she was just 6 years old. Mental. She came up with the idea on a rainy day when her parents challenged her and her siblings to draw a picture of any invention they could come up with. Kelly based the T-Pack on a gun holster, but instead of drawing out a gun, kids could have their games at hand wherever they went. In the end, she even ended up employing her own dad in the company at 6 years old. At that age, I think I could just about write my name, so that's kind of the same.
Alright, and at number 7 we have water skiing. This was invented in 1922 by Ralph Samuelson, who used a wooden board as skis and a clothesline as a rope to water ski on Lake Pepin in Minnesota. He was 19 years old at the time, so he definitely was a bit older than some of the other inventors on our list, but he was still a teenager. It's very impressive. I mean, he invented water skiing. That was way back in 1922, which means water skiing is almost 100 years old. I might might go water skiing to celebrate that day on the 100th year.
Alright guys, next up at number 6 we have the magnetic locker wallpaper. In 2006, Sarah Buckle was a 14-year-old student who hated having to scrape her locker clean at the end of every single school year. She wanted an alternative to all that sticky paper posters that you get, and so she came up with magnetic locker wallpaper. They are packs of magnetic text and pictures that kids can plaster their lockers with without having to worry about them getting stuck to the lockers at the end of the year. They were first made through her dad's business, and within 1 year they'd already made $1 million in sales. Okay guys, we've reached number 5 spot now, and we have the pancreatic cancer screening. So there are a number of different ways to screen for pancreatic cancer, but one of them was invented by Jack Andraka when he was 15 years old. In 2012 he won the $75,000 grand prize at the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair for creating a revolutionary pancreatic cancer detection tool. It involved a paper test strip dipped into a carbon nanotube that senses changes in conductivity to quickly detect viruses. It's very clever and very cheap to make. So next time someone says teenagers are lazy, I think this teenager proved them wrong.
And now at number 4 we have the Kid Care riding car. In 1998, Spender Whale invented the Kid Car riding car at just 6 years old. During a hospital visit, he noticed that a lot of sick kids couldn't play because they were hooked up to an IV drip. He came up with the idea of a toy car with a built-in IV so the kids can play freely without worrying about it getting cut. For this invention, he became the youngest ever member of the National Gallery for America's Young Inventors. That's such an incredible achievement for a 6-year-old boy. Me at 6 years old, I'm just learning to suck my thumb. Next up, number 3, we have the snowmobile. Yes, the snowmobile was invented by a teenager. The inventor was Joseph Armand Bombardier. He was from a rural Canadian town where the roads would be deep in snow in the winter times. He was 15 years old when he attached an engine to a 2-person sled. Over the next 37 years of his life, he kept perfecting and improving this basic invention into the snowmobile we now know today. Incredible.
Alright, moving on to number 2 now. We have the toy truck. Yeah, like the toy truck.
Like the Tonka truck?
No, the toy truck that you see everywhere in the world. The thing little kids have, they push. That was invented by a kid. I'm sure all of us have had one or at least seen one of these in our lives. In 1963, at the age of just 5 years old, Robert W. Patch took some ordinary shoe boxes and nailed in some bottle caps for wheels. It was a basic little truck that could hold things and tilt back. Now believe it or not, he had invented the toy truck right there and then. He was so young at the time that when he went to sign the patent application, he couldn't even write his own name, so he just had to sign it with an X. Guess he wasn't very clever after all.
Okay guys, this is it, the moment we've all been waiting for. Number 1, we are talking about the safety gate. Have you guys ever seen these gates that people fit into sliding doors into their homes? Yeah? I think most of us have. Well, these are called the lock-and-block safety gates, and they were invented, get this, by a 10-year-old. Tharon Trujillo, he was watching TV one day when he saw his baby sister trip on a rug and fell through their open sliding glass door. She was fine, but Tharon thought that something needed to be done. He searched online with his dad to see if anyone had made a safety gate for a sliding door. They couldn't find any, so they got to work on their invention. In 2008, he won an award as one of the top 10 juvenile products of the year.
In at number 10, we have the printing press. So with knowledge comes power. The printing press helped spread knowledge and was one of the first ways an invention helped connect parts of the world. So we think the printing press was invented in 1430 by Johann Gutenberg, and it allowed for huge quantities of information to be printed en masse and spread news across the world. And this allowed newspapers to thrive and helped encourage literacy, and even brought the price of books down massively. All of a sudden, printed words were no longer something for the rich but could be accessed by all classes. Amazing. In at number 9, we have the telephone. So before you could call Drake on his cell phone, before Adele was able to say hello from the other side, before you could reach Lady Gaga and Beyonce on their video phone, the telephone was invented. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell patented the telephone. Hello. Now it was first named the electric speech machine. Very exciting. Now the invention became wildly popular and categorically revolutionized worldwide communication and global business. Fun fact for you guys, the term give someone a bell, meaning to ring them, actually comes from the name of the inventor of the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell. Hi! In at number 8 we have the flushing toilet and the sewage system. Now these two go hand in hand, or poop to poop. The pair revolutionised human sanitation. In Middle-aged Europe, up until the 1800s, sanitation was a huge problem. People used to throw their human waste into the street or into rivers, and this contaminated the water supply. People were getting sick with things like cholera. Something absolutely needed to be done. Now the first flushing toilet was invented in 1596 by Sir John Harrington, and his work was then developed by Alexander Cumming and Sir Thomas Crapper, which, by the way, is where the word crap for poop comes from. Thomas Crapper doing a poo. Great. Together with the flushing toilet, the sewage system, invented by Joseph Basil Getty, worked to divert waste from the people sort of somewhere else. This made the streets safer and a lot healthier. In at number 7 we have electricity and the light bulb. Now there is evidence to suggest that ancient Greek civilizations had a grasp of electromagnets, but electricity as we know it and harness it for commercial use today was invented in the early 1800s. Now the best example of electricity and one of the most important electrical inventions was the light bulb. Guys, can you actually imagine living without like a light, without a television, without the internet? This is insane. It's hard to imagine existence like this, but before electricity none of this was possible. In 1835, James Bowman Lindsay demonstrated a constant electric light at a public meeting in Dundee, Scotland, and from there several inventors worked to create light as we know it today. Da-ding! Light bulb moment. At number 6 we have refrigeration. Now refrigeration is a game changer for food consumption. Before the refrigerator was invented, food would go bad very quickly and it was practically impossible to store at great lengths. Now refrigeration was developed over around a 200-year period from around 1750 onwards. Now Carl von Lind designed a pretty decent fridge in 1876, but the commercial fridge freezer that we know today was released in 1923 by Frigid Air. In at number 5 we have satellite navigation. GPS, aka Global Positioning Satellites, was created by the US Department of Defense and became partially operational in 1995. Now GPS uses 24 separate satellites to function and provides location and time information in all weather conditions anywhere on the planet Earth, which is insane. Anywhere on Earth where there's an unobstructed line of sight to 4 or more GPS satellites, you could basically find out where you're going. If you have a functioning smartphone, it is almost impossible to get lost. In at number 4 we have computers. Guys, can you even imagine a life without a computer? This is insane. So English mechanical engineer Charles Babbage is considered the father of the computer and essentially originated the concept of a programmable computer. He got some help from Alan Turing, who cracked the Enigma code in World War II. He also got some help from Jack Kilby in 1958. From then, computers as we know them were born. Now back in the 80s, computers took up entire rooms. Can you imagine this? It was only in the mid to late 90s that homes and businesses started to really use them. What came first? The chicken or the egg? The computer or the internet? Well, the computer came first, but it is hard to imagine using a computer without the internet. That's right, in at number 3 we have the internet. All hail the internet. Now the internet as we know it today was a collaboration between Americans Vinton Cerf and Robert Kahn and Briton Tim Berners-Lee. Now after Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1991, people were able to access information in web browsers. Then came the invention of JavaScript, which really helped move things along. Then we had Wi-Fi. Now many of our younger audience members won't remember dial-up internet, but I did. As a kid we had dial-up internet and you used to have to use a phone line, only one, no one else could be using it, and it made this noise like that was the sound of the internet when I was younger. Maybe Google it, I hope it's out there. Anyway, hooray for the internet, hooray for you guys, hooray for YouTube. Let's move on. In at number 2 we have the wheel, or should we say wheels, because like 2, 3, 4 wheels, better than one. So the wheel is one of the earliest and most important inventions of all time. Wheels made it possible for transporting heavy loads and also transporting people. Cars, even aeroplanes would not exist without that initial invention of the wheel. Wheel! Really good invention. So guys, we have reached that all important moment in our most amazing top 10 inventions that changed the world, where I am going to reveal the number 1 invention, a game changer, the discovery that revolutionized civilization as we know it. It can only be vaccination. So to cut a really long story short, smallpox was a huge killer back in the 18th century, and Edward Jenner noticed that if people contracted the non-deadly cowpox, then they didn't get smallpox. He tested his theory, then essentially he developed inoculation as we know it today. From this, scientists were able to inject people with very, very weak strains of deadly viruses, then people were able to develop antibodies to fight them, protecting them from contracting the real thing, saving their lives. Now, Edward Jenner is largely considered to be the man who has saved the most lives in the world because of his discovery. Hurrah, Edward, you are a major babe. We love you, even though you're dead.